Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday to you all. It's January 19th, 2025, and we're going to talk about Vedic astrology, what it means to you, what it means to people around the world, and how it affects the world in general, and how it affects you in particular in a very general way. Uh, the If you would like to contact me for a reading or for lessons, I am available for both those things. I can't broadcast prices in this format, so you can call me. It doesn't cost you anything to ask me what's involved in the reading or what's involved in lessons. It's just, I can just advise you on what I charge, and you can contact me. So the best way to contact me is to text me at 508-525-0001. Again, that's 508-525-0001. And you can also email me at Gary Gomes, G at gmail.com. Well, that is really not coming out that great in the transcription. Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. Okay. So Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. And you can also text me at WhatsApp. I'm on WhatsApp if you're on that application. Uh, and you can even look me up on Facebook or on Instagram or on X if you're so inclined. The This week has been kind of an interesting week because we've had a transition of power in the United States. So we'll have President Trump assuming office um, next tomorrow, actually, and Vice President, excuse me, and President Biden leaving office. This is President Biden's last day in office. So we're at sort of a transition point. Um, we have seen. So I'm going to share the chart with you right now. And it's not working properly, so I'm going to stop the share and go back again and try it again. All right, that worked. All right, so uh, one of the big stories. So in the United States, two of the big stories over the past week, or we actually have like three very big stories over the past week. The California fires continue to rage. Um, we also have um, the short term, probably the most consequential, the ceasefire in the Middle East and the agreement to release hostages, although sometimes I can hit snags. And finally, we have the confirmation hearings for the transition to the new president. There are other stories going on around the world. That is, South Korea is essentially um, it's not near a point of collapse, but it's considered to be near a point of a potential civil war. Um, you have some activity happening, which has been ongoing in Europe. Sweden has essentially closed down its borders, which is, Sweden's an extremely tolerant country. It really has to be under a great deal of pressure for that to happen. And a lot of countries in Europe essentially switching over to um, that line of thinking. Not every politician, obviously, in Europe is taking that stance, but it seems to be um, an increasingly popular position. Um, the other thing you have right now is um, a variety of countries in leadership crisis. So Germany, China, Myanmar, uh, which used to be called Burma many years ago. So it's that part of the world is getting a little bit more fragile, and even Iran, um, bordering on conflict with its neighbors. So these are incredible. These are the ones I can think of off the top of my head that are serious issues or serious um, problems in political power. The You should see a tapering off, I think, of the fires within about by midweek at the latest in California, and that's mainly because Mars itself um, is heading backwards into Gemini. Mars right now is rather weak. It doesn't mean there won't be, but there will be a lot of lying about the fires over the next 4 to 5 days. And that's mainly because we'll see Mercury and Mars aspecting each other. And that will also hold true for the general political climate around the world. Uh, the other thing is you may see some, and I hope this doesn't happen, you may see some rescinding of the conditions of the ceasefire in Gaza. I pray to God that doesn't happen because we really don't need any more trouble in that part of the world. And that's mainly because of the Mars Mercury aspect. A lot's riding on this Mars Mercury aspect, by the way. And finally, uh, I think you'll see a great many untruths told about cabinet nominees and also on the other side by their opponents or by the nominees themselves because of this Mars Mercury opposition. So this is going to be a week in which the media was essentially um, more restrained over the past few weeks, I think, than they have been. And that was mainly because Mars itself was weak. Mars is a strategic planet, so people really weren't able to develop effective strategies for blocking what they didn't want to happen. Uh, Tulsi Gabbard nomination, I think, is in trouble. So the ones that were in the most trouble, I think I said a couple of weeks ago, astrologically, were um, there were actually three that I thought were in trouble at that time, but I didn't say the third one. Uh, so excuse me while I grab a drink. Um, so Gabbard, mainly because I think she's made so many enemies among the neocons and the Democrats. Um, the other the other one who I said was in trouble was Matt Gaetz, and he's been taken out of the picture. And the third one, but the other one is going to be Cash Patel. So we'll see what happens with those. Um, I'm thinking that Gabbard and Patel will make their way through, but it won't be an easy process. Um, and and that's mainly because Mars will reverse itself within about 3 weeks' time, and you'll start to see a change in direction. You'll start to see the insults and lies start to become much more obvious. So, but again, it's going to be really the press has been noticeably more muted over the Trump uh, 47th presidency. That'll change over the next couple of months. Okay, so you'll basically see attacks, and it's mainly because of the Mars and Mercury interaction. The other thing is, hopefully, um, so from this chart, we have Jupiter in the first house. So that's, I- I'm doing the broadcast right now when Jupiter's in that particular house. At the time I said it was 1223. Let me see if anything's changed since then. All right, so nothing really has changed sign-wise since then. The rising sign hasn't changed markedly. Um, the one thing that I do notice in this chart is um, there's a Saturn-Venus conjunction in the 10th house for Taurus rising. Normally, that's a good conjunction, but Saturn is beating Venus in a phenomenon called planetary war. That's when the planets are within 1 degree of each other. I tend to take the simplest explanation. Saturn's at lowest degree. There are a variety of ways to describe planetary war, but in this particular case, Venus is um, at higher degree, Saturn's at lower degree. There is a prevalent belief that Venus, or there is a belief in astrology that Venus always wins planetary war. And the main reason for that is because Venus is the brightest planet. It's really considered to be, um, I would tend to say, the most powerful planet in Vedic astrology. That's neither good nor bad. That's just the state. Is so in terms of levels, Rahu and Ketu are the most powerful. Sun and Moon are the next in power, and Venus being essentially the brightest object in the sky is is considered most powerful. It beats everything. But Saturn being this close to Venus, it, I really don't think you can justifiably say that Saturn's not having an influence on Venus. Venus is um, trying to retreat or trying to move ahead. Is trying to get away from Saturn's influence. Saturn will never catch up with it because Saturn is a slow-moving planet. So this is in in an annual chart, they would call this an Ishrafa or a separating yoga. So, so Venus is moving away from Saturn. Saturn will never catch up, but it's still not considered to be a good phenomenon. So it can't bring, so it brings the significations of the first house and the ninth and 10th houses together, which is considered a good combination, and it creates a kind of a Raj Yoga in this chart. So anybody who has planets in Aquarius uh, or Sun in Aquarius or or a Libra rising, this is actually considered to be a good combination, but it doesn't feel very good. It's because Saturn's kind of an oppressive planet. And so people with Libra suns, this is mainly October 15th through November 15th, will experience stomach problems or um, obstacles in digestion and um, also some anxiety because Saturn does that in a chart. Mars also aspects that combination. That weak Mars also aspects that combination. Doesn't have anything to do with it. If we use what are called the Gemini aspects, Jupiter doesn't aspect that sign. Mars does aspect that sign, and nothing else aspects that sign. So most of these planets are, it's a combination of Mars, Venus, and Saturn, which dominates the chart right now. And that won't last much longer. Uh, Within a couple of days at the outside, it'll be a combination of, and Jupiter aspects Mars, my apologies, Jupiter aspects Mars. So these are called Gemini aspects, um, or Rashi or sign aspects. The Mars will be aspecting K2 pretty soon, Mercury pretty soon, and Rahu pretty soon, and also Venus. So that should cause, this is within about, let's say, 2 weeks or so. And that will cause some disruption and some arguments and some miscommunication. Venus with Rahu tends to create unrealistic ambitions, uh, but it can, um, just trying to think of a good way to put it, it can actually shadow some of the more uh, difficult shutdowns that celebrities and leaders have had over the past few months. That won't last. That'll only last until around April at the outside. And when you have that Saturn Rahu conjunction, that'll be very dangerous for leaders and celebrities. This, again, as I said before, this is a very dangerous time for leaders, mainly because most of the planets connected with leadership are either in Capricorn or so the sun is connected with leadership. Um, Leo is connected with leadership. Aries is connected with leadership. And so most of the world's attention is focused on business with the sun being in this sign. And also, um, there's some economic anxiety over innovations or changes because of the Venus-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. I don't have to get into anything, although we do have Neptune and Rahu in Pisces. I don't really need, although it's useful to look at it, I really don't need anything to let me know there are more Hollywood scandals coming up because Rahu will be in this sign for the next few months, for the next 6 months at least. So Neptune up there is like a nice little underscore, but it's really not essential to interpretation. Uh, Pluto is with the sun. That can mean overturns in governments. But again, we have Rahu in Pisces, which is overturning belief systems, and Mercury's in Sagittarius, which essentially can mean just transitions of power. And let me see where Uranus is. Uranus is in, at least in Vedic astrology, it's about to enter, well, within a few months, it'll enter Taurus, but right now it's in Aries. And whenever you see a combination like that, that is also disruptive to leadership. So we have essentially the systems and unexpected disruptions to leadership as well. So, so whenever you have these combinations, I can always find an explanation for these with K2, Rahu, and Saturn. But it's useful to look at these things, especially if you've been used to using Western astrology as a decoding device for your interpretation. So if we're looking at this particular chart, Jupiter's in the first house, so there's some fear that we're slipping backwards economically because Jupiter's in the house of gains, so there's anxiety about gains. Venus and Saturn, although the stock market has been doing relatively well, although it's been inconsistent. And overall, governmental structures are in danger because of the Lord of the 10th house being somewhat compromised by Venus. Rahu's in the 11th house. Again, some scandals connected with leaders and with ideologies. I've seen this a few times before. So essentially you had in the late 60s the some scandals involving gurus and spiritual teachers that happened in the 1990s as well. And you also have scandals connected with presidents, okay? And we're in a similar cycle right now. So leaders from all around the world are having personal problems. A lot of leaders are being charged, or not a lot, a sizable number of leaders are being charged with corruption or being voted out of office, and now continue for the next 6 months at least. And I think that overall, no matter how you feel about this, whether or not you feel they're justified or unjustified, it's just the karma in the charts. It's just the action of the world right now. The world feels like it needs to change. It feels like it needs to clear out and face things a little bit less, um, a little bit more head on. Uh, and I think whenever I've seen these kinds of changes, like let's say in the late 60s with Nixon, even with the election of Bill Clinton in 1992, and also with the election of Donald Trump in 2016 and again in 2024. There's um, there's always some kind of a shift where people feel like government is not taking care of their personal problems or their personal issues. And as a matter of fact, this phenomenon is happening pretty much all around the world. And um, the causes of it are disease, but also increasing criticism of government, less willingness to go along. And so that's K2 and Virgo. And I think overall, when you have phenomena like this happening, um, it it behooves um, people to pay attention to it, not because they've necessarily been doing the wrong things all along, but because people feel they've been doing the wrong things all along. And that's how decisions are made in elections. Uh, so if a certain group or enough people feel like they've been ignored, they'll do something to get your attention. And that's what's happening pretty much, um, I would say almost everywhere. Okay. So these combinations is Rahu and Pisces, is K2 and Virgo. we're expecting more pure behavior from our politicians. If you notice, K2 doesn't have an underline under it. Rahu is direct as well. So this is a not unusual phenomenon, but it's something that tries to make up for the uh, calculation errors that are present in the mean node. Um, but to be honest with you, the nodes are such large presences in signs that if we're using true or mean, it doesn't, the difference is not that great. And, so they tend to, it's been my experience, they influence the sign from the moment they put their foot in the sign to the time they absolutely have left. So this is so this is a pretty interesting phenomenon in Vedic astrology. Rahu and Ketu were the only things I've seen stay strong throughout the sign. You know, so it's essentially like putting ink into water. Um, so if you're putting ink into clear water, all of a sudden the water assumes that color. That's what happens when Rahu or Ketu and enter a sign. It's it the color overwhelms um, sign. All right, so let's get to your individual charts for this week. So for Aries, we have Mars is gradually weakening. This week, you'll see a shift where you're more able to realize your ambitions, your goals, less emphasis on the family, and more emphasis on attaining your goals, even if you have to stretch the truth a little bit to get them. Jupiter's in the second house. It's strong because it's retrograde. Retrograde planets are always by nature strong, except if they're at a really low degree or really high degree. Um, Relationship life may be tough, may have been tough the past couple of days, past few days because Mars is weak in this chart, and that's been the relationship indicator for the past, I would say, for the past 3 to 4 days. Um, and and essentially it tends to make people a little bit timid or a little bit cautious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Moon and Ketu are in the sixth house. That tends to give a focus on digestive health for the sign. Lots of illnesses going around. Mercury's in the ninth house, not bad. This is a better placement than it's been in before, so some financial gain. Sun is in the 10th house, so career life will be strong. And finally, Venus and Saturn are placed in the 11th house. So slow gains, but definitely some gains before the end of the month for this particular sign, but also a lot of expenses as we still have Rahu in this sign. For Taurus, this would be May 15th to June 15th. You have Jupiter in the first house. 10th house Lord is Jupiter. Rahu's in the 10th house, so unexpected gains of the cash, although it won't sustain itself, and also unexpected financial needs from spouse or business partners because of Mercury, with the second house of money being placed in the eighth house of other people's money. So this can give unexpected financial gains, but also it's going to give some unexpected debts. For Mars is in the third house. He is about to enter the second house, so the sign will have some difficulty expressing itself in terms of dealing with other people. It'll be more aggressive. It'll be more forceful. Relationship life will also suffer to a certain extent, to be truthful, because this is a typical sign in which relationship partners will tend to either lie um, or fight to get what they want. Fifth house has Moon and Ketu in it. This isn't necessarily a bad combination, but it can make it difficult to communicate with kids and unexpected breaks and unexpected um, blocks to luck, not breaks and luck, blocks to luck. Um, Unexpected enemies at work, although this isn't a bad combination, they'll be conquered pretty quickly. And Mercury in the eighth house, Sun in the ninth house, more work responsibilities and more financial gains, as we said before. For Gemini, Gemini has um, it's Lord in the seventh house, so it should be actually pretty easy to attract new business partnerships or even new romantic interests this week. Um, and Mars, but again, I would delay on getting involved in any major long-term commitments until for a couple of months, just because of Mercury and Mars being a mutual aspect to each other. Let's see now. Moon and K2 are in the fourth house, so there's a lot of focus on home life, family life. Let's see now. Venus is Lord of the fifth, placed in the ninth house. That's actually a good combination for gain of self-control for children. Sun is in the eighth house, so this individual lacks confidence in themselves. Right now, these individuals lack confidence in themselves right about now. And Rahu's in the 10th house. There's some panic or some upset over a career. There's also some worry about whether or not there'll be any um, false accusations made against them, which could lead to either imprisonment or financial loss. And that is apparently happening right now. So just be careful who you trust, who you bring into your inner circle of friends. Um, Cancer has Mars in it. Again, like I said, paradoxically, this is a, a good bad placement. So Mars rules the 10th house of career, rules the fifth house of luck. So it should bring some luck in career. But there's also a lot of stress from this combination. Mars moves into the 12th house within a day or so, and you'll start to see people more aggressive in terms of their career life. And Sun is the second lord. He is placed in the seventh house. New relationship opportunities, new business opportunities for this particular sign. Moon and Ketu are in the third house. More bravery, but again, more anxiety, maybe a little bit of depression at the start of the week. Let's see now. Mercury's in the sixth house. So again, enemies from people telling lies about you, that shows up pretty strongly. Sun's in the seventh, that's actually good. Venus and Saturn are in the eighth. So there's this feeling that luck won't improve, but by February 14th, by early February, you'll see a big change in luck. Um, Jupiter's in the 11th house, good for financial gains. For Leo, Leo has the sun in the sixth house, so there'll be a feeling of struggle of having to fight for what you want. Um, and let's see now, Moon and Ketu are in the second house, so that can give, it can have people misinterpret your words, say nasty things about you which aren't true. And Mercury's in the fifth house, so that's actually good for financial gains, good for prosperity. Sun is in the sixth house, we've already spoken about that. So some opposition from certain governmental authorities. Saturn's in the seventh house. Um, Not necessarily a bad combination of relationship partners. Tends to be good looking, but very serious. Um, Rahu's in the eighth house. Again, some hidden conspiracies against these individuals. Um, and Jupiter being in the 10th house. Inevitably, this position will get what it wants. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Mars is in the 12th. Um, Mars sneaks his way back into the 11th house over the next week or so, and you'll see an increase in gains for this sign, and also an increase in friendships. For Virgo, Virgo has Moon K2 in the first house right now. That can cause some stomach illnesses or some stomach problems. Uh, they're only temporary, probably until tomorrow. And um, for this particular sign, 11th house, Lord is in the first house. That's not a bad placement. You'll actually give some financial gain, some small financial gain through part-time activities. Mercury's in the fourth house. A lot of focus on home, a lot of focus on family. Sun is in the also on coworkers. Sun is in the fifth house. If Sun's in the fifth house, the person has either a difficult relationship with father, or father tries to teach these individuals lessons that get ignored. So I think it'll be a little bit difficult for you to deal with supervisors or people of higher rank this week. Um, and Venus and Saturn are in the sixth house. So if Venus and Saturn are in the sixth house for this rising sign, money will come, but it will be hard earned. Rahu's in the seventh house. Not a good time for romantic entanglements, to be quite honest. Jupiter's in the ninth house. That's actually a good position for financial growth and financial success. And Mars is in the 11th. So that's, again, the immediate gains you'll see from that financial progress won't be evident for, I would say, a couple of months. For Libra, Libra has no planets in the first house, and Mercury's in the third house, so it'll be a little bit polite or a little bit self-effacing about um, going after its goals. Sun is in the fourth house. There's a lot of attention on home life. Rahu and Venus, Saturn in the fifth house, some stomach issues, as I said before. Rahu, there's anxiety about health. Jupiter is in the eighth house. There's a lot of interest in hidden knowledge and in investigating behind the scenes, but not a lot of happiness from that. Mars is in the 10th house, about to go back to the ninth house. So there will be an increase in financial growth for the sign after Mars changes signs in a couple of days. And Moon is in the 12th house. So the house ruling career is blocked by K2, and there'll be a certain feeling of hopelessness connected with career. That won't last that long, as you'll see. Um, because uh, because because basically um, Mars will go to the Mars will go to the ninth house in this chart. Moon will go to the first house, see an improvement in career life, and um, this feeling of being boxed in, not doing what you want to do, that'll disappear within a day or so. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Mars in the ninth house. Uh, it'll soon go to its eighth house. So that'll make relationship life rather difficult for this sign. Financial gains, though, uh, are to be realized for Scorpio rising. Sun is in the third house, a lot of courage for the sign. Saturn and Venus are in the fourth house, so there's a lot of focus on home life and home improvement, mainly the urging a relationship partner. Rahu's in the fifth house. Some problems with rebelliousness on the part of children. Jupiter's in the seventh house. Relationship partners will want everything done exactly correctly. Um, Mars is sort of like the wild card in this chart because it's between signs, basically. And so you'll feel like this need to show people what to do and but also back out of the conflict for a little while. The Moon K2 conjunction in the 11th house is good for revealing who your enemies were or who people who want to take you down were. That's a pretty solid combination for that. And let's look at Sagittarius. Sagittarius has Mercury in the first house, so good for relationship life. Although this chart will feel like it has to work really hard in order to make a relationship go forward. Rahu's in the fourth house, and Sun, Venus, and Saturn are in the second. The Sun is in the second house, Saturn and Venus are in the third house. So a lot of bravery, a lot of potential financial ambition. But Rahu in the fourth house, it won't feel like it's enough to satisfy people at home. Jupiter in the sixth will be struggle for the sign. Mars in the seventh, again, relationship problems, fights, and Moon and Ketu, excuse me, in the 10th house. Again, some problems with being recognized in career. I just did want to mention that there's a pattern in the sky where a lot of the planets seem to be lining up. So when that happens, you tend to get this very, very, so Mercury, Sun, Saturn, Venus, uh, Jupiter, and Mars, I believe, are all kind of lining up in sequence in, in the chart. So that's usually represents big changes in people's lives. That'll be particularly true for Sagittarius, um, Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo rising. So that's just something I want to mention just there. Um, Capricorn has Sun in the first house, so that's the eighth house lord in the first house. So there'll be a lot of investigations of new ways of making money, new financial growth, new practical applications. For this rising sign, for Capricorn rising sun or moon sign, Saturn and Venus are in the second house. Good for financial growth, but again, it's going to be very slow, very, very unspectacular. Rahu's in the third house. A lot of ambition for this sign, but um, I probably wouldn't recommend people go in with like the latest investment, like the newest thing. I'm still rather cautious about crypto, just um, because I've seen a couple of movements come through like it. They remind me a great deal of it. And I looked at the crypto chart. It doesn't look really encouraging to me for another few years. Excuse me. Now that doesn't mean that everybody's going to lose money in crypto. That's not the idea. But it's I would say a relatively high risk investment at this particular point in time. Just that's just my word. This isn't financial advice. It's just how I see crypto. So I'm not qualified to give financial advice. I'm not qualified to advise you on where to put your money. Okay, so just to be clear, this isn't financial advice. Um, but it looks like it's going to be rather erratic until at least the summertime, maybe even beyond that. Um, the other thing is for Capricorn rising, let's talk about Capricorn rising for a second. Mars is just leaving the seventh house, going to the sixth house, so it'll be easier to deal with. It'll be a little bit easier to deal with relationship life from this combination. And Moon and Ketu are in the ninth house, good for financial growth. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Saturn and Venus in a Raj Yoga or a special combination in the first house. Can bring money, luck, fame, success, but only if you work hard for it. Saturn being in that first house will make you work very hard for it. Rahu's in the second house, so again, there's a lot of push towards financial growth, and this is especially connected with property or real estate because of Jupiter being in the fourth house, also with education. Mars is in the sixth house, you'll soon be in the fifth house. So this means financial growth may come through properties or other fixed assets like oil or coal, things like that, things that come from the ground. Let's see now. For this chart, uh, Moon and K2 are in the eighth house. So there's a lot of investigation, a lot of overcoming of obstacles over the next few days. Moon will be in Libra within a day or so. That'll be that'll be very good for you in terms of career growth. And Mercury's in the 11th house, good for financial gains. Sun's in the 12th house. You're going to have to watch out for expenses over this month. You know, for Pisces, Rahu's in the first house. Again, this indicates general disruption for the sign, a re-examination of what it values in life. Right now, what it values is financial growth, but Jupiter's in the third house in Taurus, security. Mars is in the fifth house. Children will be a little bit difficult to deal with. That shows up again from this chart. And K2 and Moon are in the seventh house. And this can mean uh, an unusual relationship starting or an unusual romantic attraction starting. Let's see now. Usually through work. Work life looks good. Mercury's in the 10th house. That's good for financial growth. Sun is in the 11th house. Again, good for financial growth. Venus and Saturn are in the 12th house. Not so good for financial growth. So there are certain factors which outweigh the financial prosperity aspect, but you will be good. You will be okay over the next few months. All right, so that's it for the signs this week. Let's look at the astro mapping software. All right, so that worked well this time. Okay, so we still have a Venus. So let's start with Mars. Mars is also I had read about I had heard about a new super volcano which is like right around here, I believe. So we have two super volcanoes in one around here in Yellowstone and one over here in the Aleutians. I believe it's over here. And so, but again, I don't think those are in any danger of erupting anytime soon. Uh, it's just something to keep your eye on. Um, there will be some abatement of the fire that's been going on because we have Jupiter hitting California and Western Canada, and also I think that if we have that Venus and Saturn line so close to California, along with a Rahu line passing right through California, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon, and close to Nevada, there will be some political scandals coming out of this entire series of events that have happened in California. There may even also be some panic, or I hope I'm wrong about this, even some potential earthquakes or earthquake scares in California. Uh, the moon line is running through Nevada, but it's still hitting California. So again, that looks like it's pretty perpetual. So maybe give it another week to calm down, uh, for the fires to calm down. Mercury's running through Texas, um, but I guess I'm just trying to think of the right word to use. At least from this chart, there'll be a lot of communications coming from North Dakota, South Dakota, all the way down through Texas and Mexico. So those places will be prominently featured in the news. Disruption in Minnesota, looks like Oklahoma and Iowa, and all the way down into Louisiana and down into Mexico. There's a sun line going through Michigan, it looks like, um, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and right next to, okay, so at least from this chart, I had to stop and think for a second. At least for this chart, we have increased governmental authority coming down through this band right here, all the way over to here. Maybe even some violence breaking out in this part of the country. And there's a Jupiter line coming down right through New England, almost right in the area where I am, which is interesting. And down into Guyana and down into Brazil. So, and the Venus-Saturn line still intersects Brazil. So I think there won't be a lot of change on continental South America, but you'll see the government, the Brazilian government, disrupted. Uh, the Venus-Saturn line, Greenland, I normally wouldn't have mentioned prior to this year in a conversation, but there's a scandal brewing over Greenland and also over governance, as you may be aware. And um, let's see now. I need to get this out of the way. I need to see what's at the bottom of the screen. And that's a moon line running through Iceland. So again, that's large public presence, but a lot of controversy. As we head over towards Mauritania and Sierra Leone um, and Western Africa, I know Gabon's going through some kind of revolutionary cycle. I mentioned Gabon because I actually had a client contact me from that country once. And my favorite obscure country, but it's down here. And basically there's a Mars-Mercury line um, hitting this particular line. So there can't be lies emanating from the government. This is true in Spain. This is true in England. This is true all the way over to um, throughout most of Africa and all the way over to Ukraine and Saudi Arabia and Eastern Africa. So this entire part of the world seems to be caught up in a political mess. There's not a lot happening right now, just because I think because of the timing of this. Uh, Not a lot of people are campaigning just yet, or not actively campaigning just yet. Um, there's a Venus and Saturn line intersecting the Jupiter line, so that's slowing down peace negotiations. And they're spilling out over Madagascar too. There's a descending Rahu line running through Iran, which can indicate some panic in that government, some fear or panic in that government. And there's a Venus-Saturn line running through Saudi Arabia and Eastern Europe, uh, right near Turkey. So again, that is indicative of the reconstruction that's taking place in Syria, not necessarily of how fair it is. Let's see now. We have Rahu line running through Iran. We've already said that. And the Moon line running through Afghanistan and Pakistan. So right now, those countries are quiet. They're not heavily involved in any conflict, but their economies are essentially in collapse mode. They're not, so I think it's only a matter of time before something negative happens in those areas. For India, India has a Mercury line running through. We should be hearing a lot about India this coming week, especially about their governance structure and Mars. Um, there'll be some conflict between India and China. Now, not necessarily saying a military conflict, okay? So I try to be careful about these things. Um, let's see. All right, so let's go over to, we do have this Rahu line I've already spoken about passing over Pakistan, going into Tibet, and there's also a Mercury line running over India. We've spoken about that already. Mars line, some potential for conflict between Ladakh and China. And there's a sun line running close to Myanmar. So that government's apparently is in chaos, from what I understand. Um, the rest of this region is doing fairly well. Indonesia does have some expanding economy matters going on. And since Saturn roll over Japan, Japan looks like it's going to finally get its act together a little bit. And so Jupiter is passing over Western Australia, and Venus and Saturn are passing over mid-Australia, and we have passing over Eastern Australia. So what these patterns mean to me is that the western part of the country is okay. The middle part is suffering a little bit from financial issues, and the far right side of the map is really needs improved. Um, and also they'll be sort of the source of unpleasant news for a while. Um, so let me see. So let's go back to the map. And have anything in New Zealand? In New Zealand, I'm sorry, I zoned out there for a second. So we have a Mercury line going close to New Zealand. We'll probably hear a little bit about New Zealand this week, and but it's not really in the main focus of the news. So that's about it. The areas I would keep my eyes on would be California, um, central United States, all the way down to Mexico and Brazil, and also Western Africa, Saudi Arabia, Israel, obviously, and South Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and uh, especially in terms of countries like Iran and Russia and Ukraine, some signs of deceit because Jupiter's retrograde is not really going to tell the whole truth, and also some panic in Iran and Afghanistan and Pakistan. And finally, some potential for conflict in this region of the world right next to China. And so like sandwiched in between, so essentially Myanmar. And finally, uh, as we go towards the end of the week, we'll see more news coming out about Japan, more news coming out um, about Japan's slowly stagnating economy. It'll get better, but right now it's been slowly staggering. And let me just see now. So I think that's about it for this week. I'll see you next week. In the meanwhile, I love you all. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share and comment. If you want to get in touch with me for any of the services I offer, that's fine. If you want to get in touch with me to be on the show, that's fine. Just contact me. I'm really easy to talk with. Okay? All right. God bless you and have a wonderful week. And remember, I do love you all, and I thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much. Have a great week.